I want to know what happened between yesterday and today, and why today, in the registration committee's room, our delegates and the election monitors were sent out, and they closed the door with the excuse that the system went down for an hour. What happened in that room for the results to change? We need answers.
Jourmana Haddad is a women's rights activist, poet, and once publisher of a controversial erotic magazine in Lebanon. Now she's filing a lawsuit to try and overturn the results of her failed bid for a seat in Lebanon's parliament. The prominent author ran as an independent candidate in the general election held earlier this month. Preliminary results showed she had won. She made the announcement herself, but the next day the final tally told a different story, and her supporters are crying foul. Well, let's talk to Jourmana Haddad herself, who joins us from Beirut. Great pleasure talking to you and having you here on The Newsmakers, ma'am. So tell me, why do you think they took your seat away from you?
The first reason would definitely be because we're in Lebanon. I mean, that says a lot. But you mentioned that I had won in the preliminary results. Actually, these were not preliminary. These were the actual counting of votes that happened in the centers, in the voting centers themselves. But once those voting boxes had been moved and recounted by the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Interior, and after the system, for some reason, broke down, that's when the actual result changed. So it was not a preliminary result. It was more a result that was quite final, but not officially announced yet.
Now, Jourmana, they say you jumped the gun, that there was an unofficial count, and then the next day in the official count, we found that Antoine Pano surpassed your numbers, and that's all there was to it, no more, no less. Tell me why you disagree with that.
Well, because the party to which Antoine Pano belongs had itself announced my victory and the victory of Paula Yacoubian. And it was still the case till early at dawn. So I have the right to have many question marks
Sure.
About what happened. And if they say so, it doesn't mean it's true.
Right. Looking at the numbers, still very few women in parliament after this general election. Lebanese politics still seems to be heavily dominated by men. Is that by design?
Well, obviously, we are living in a patriarchal society where women are told ever since they're kids that politics are a man's world, a man's thing. So they do not encourage women to participate in politics, but that's not the only reason. I think that another important reason is that the parties themselves, the ruling parties now in Lebanon, did not really comply with our call to have a quota for women, which is an important stage in order for us to be more involved in politics, to have people have more, women in politics to look up to, but they didn't agree on that. They didn't want anyone telling them who to put forward and who to not put forward. So they refused, and they used the argument that women in Lebanon are so advanced that they do not need a quota in order to run for politics. Obviously, after having 4 women in parliament for many years and now having just 6, we do need the quota.
Right. You mentioned those political parties. They're deeply entrenched political parties, and for many, their political party is connected to their religion or their sect or their identity, right? In retrospect, because you ran as an independent, do you feel maybe you should have perhaps gone into one of the vehicles of one of the main political parties and tried to join one of them instead of running as an independent because they're so big and so powerful?
No, definitely not. I mean, at least not for me. I'm not one to compromise on such things. I was running against this ruling order of things, against all these confessional systems that are ruling our country, and I wouldn't have any credibility in my own eyes before the credibility in the eyes of those who would have voted for me if I had run with one of those ruling parties that do not respect equal rights for women, that do not respect the necessity for us to move forward to a civil state, that do not respect individual and public liberties. They are only using religion as a vehicle to have more control. So I would never compromise on that.
You built up all your credibility, your gravitas, your fame on your writing, your work as an artist and a writer and so forth. And being an artist and a writer, it puts you in a unique position in society. You get to be the court jester a little bit. You get to say the emperor has no clothes. You get to sometimes say things that other people are thinking but can't say. I wonder, why did you decide that you wanted to, beyond having that role as an artist and a writer, why did you decide you want to get involved in the dirty world of politics, which is about compromise and sometimes saying things you don't fully, truly believe?
Well, that was not because that was not politics for me. I think politics are a dirty business and a double standard world because of the people who are practicing it. And I was actually looking forward to being able to say the emperor has no clothes, looking the emperor in the eyes from inside the parliament, instead of just having to point my fingers at the emperor with more distance between us as a writer and as a journalist. So I definitely was aiming at playing the same role, but also contributing more in trying to find solutions to our problems. Because one thing is saying what's wrong with us, which is very important, because the first part of healing is to admit that we are suffering from a certain disease, and we are suffering from a lot. But the second part of healing is definitely finding viable solutions in order for us to move to a real strong state. And this is what we lack. We lack a lot of will. We lack a lot of, interest. There is a lot of indifference, without generalizing, that is affecting the political parties, because they know they can always count on using the confessional instincts in order to gain back their seats. And this has to stop at some point. And I was looking forward to be part of that solution.
Okay, well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Prime Minister Hariri and how easy or difficult it is to form a new government. But for the moment, I've got to move on. Jourmana Haddad, it's been a pleasure talking to you here on the Newsmakers. Thank you very much for joining us.